There has long been a legend in party circles that the pseudonym Stalin appeared because of a woman named Stal, with whom Joseph Dzhugashvili was allegedly close before the revolution. The writer Felix Chuev even asked Lazar Kaganovich about this. He remembered that a certain Lyudmila Stal really existed, but he knew nothing about her relationship with Stalin. And he added with a grin, "They say, from 1906 to 1919, Stalin was single, so he had the right to a private life. But if you look at the documents and memoirs of people of that time, this version falls apart. Lyudmila Stal does not appear at all in the sources about Dzhugashvili's life in the early 1910s. Stalin himself, when asked about the origin of the pseudonym, answered evasively. For example, in an interview with New York Times journalist Walter Duranty in December 1933, he said that the name Stalin was given to him by his comrades around 1910 or 1911. They thought it suited him. The old underground workers, he said, constantly used nicknames. They had to hide from the Tsarist police. Curiously, when the interview was reprinted by Pravda, this fragment was carefully removed. And yet the principle of looking for a woman, here it seems, is not quite passed by. But we're talking about a completely different woman. The historian Alexander Ostrovsky drew attention to one curious fact. When Dzhugashvili was arrested in Baku on March 23, 1910, Stefania Leandrovna Petrovskaya was detained with him. In the gendarme papers, she was directly referred to as his common-law wife. They met while still in exile in the city of Solvychegodsk, Vologda province. Dzhugashvili ended up there at the end of 1908. Stephanie was about 24 at the time. She came from a noble family, was born in Odessa, graduated from the gymnasium, and studied at the higher women's courses. The revolutionary environment dragged it out quite early. For her participation in anti-government activities, she was first investigated in Moscow, and then exiled to Vologda province. At first she lived in Totma, then she was transferred to Solvychegodsk. There she lived for some time with another exile, Pavel Tribulev. But soon Dzhugashvili appeared, then known among the Bolsheviks by the nickname Koba. What exactly happened between them is anyone's guess, but the fact is that after her exile ended in the summer of 1909, Petrovskaya followed him to Baku, a city she had previously been completely unfamiliar with. Koba lived in Baku like a real underground worker, using a fake passport in the name of Hovhannes Totomians. He constantly changed apartments, hid from the police, and was engaged in party work. Of course, there could not be an ordinary family life in such conditions, but the connection between them was clearly serious. Even the history of his pseudonyms indicates this. At the end of 1909, Dzhugashvili published the article Letters from the Caucasus in the illegal newspaper Social Democrat. They are signed unusually, K. Stefan or K. Saint. Most likely, it is a derivative of the name Stephanie. Something like Koba Stefan is a Koba owned by Stefania. There were such things among the Bolsheviks. For example, earlier, after the death of his first wife, Ekaterina Svanidze, Dzhugashvili himself signed the articles K. Kato, combining his underground name Koba with the name of his late wife. His friend Suren Spandarian also used a pseudonym formed on behalf of his wife. In the spring of 1910, everything came to an abrupt end. On March 23rd, Koba and Stefania were arrested. During the search, nothing was found in Dzhugashvili's experienced conspirator, but Petrovskaya was found to have manuscripts and a whole pack of illegal pamphlets. During the interrogation, Dzhugashvili, as befitted an underground fighter, did not tell anything about his activities. Moreover, he even denied that he was living with Petrovskaya, perhaps because he simply did not want to compromise her. She, on the contrary, admitted that she was cohabiting with him, but refused to say whether he lived with her. The investigation lasted several months. In June 1910, Petrovskaya was released for lack of evidence, but Dzhugashvili was kept in custody and they decided to send him back into exile. Moreover, he was banned from living in the Caucasus for 5 years. While in prison in Baku, He even applied for permission to marry Stefania Petrovskaya. They formally gave permission. But the paper came too late. Dzhugashvili had already been sent into exile. So their story seems to be over. But the memoirs of his contemporaries paint a different picture. According to friends, Petrovskaya remained in Baku. Koba wrote her letters from exile, sometimes quite harsh. He reproached her for not wanting to go to him. In the end, she married someone else, a Menshevik named Levin. They had a daughter, and then the fun begins. After this story, Dzhugashvili stops using the pseudonym Stefan. But he needs a new one, memorable and at the same time similar to the old one. In 1912, his articles appeared in the newspaper Zvezda with the caption K. Stalin, K. Solin, sometimes just KS. It's like he's sorting through the options. The final version appears soon. In January 1913, the newspaper Social Democrat published an article with the caption K. Stalin. Then, under this name, the important work Marxism and the National Question was published. By this time, Dzhugashvili had already been arrested and exiled to the Turukhansk region. Before the revolution, he hardly printed anything anymore. And when he returns to political life after the February Revolution of 1917, the name Stalin has already been firmly established. So it's quite possible that there really is an old personal story behind the famous pseudonym, just not with a woman named Stal, but with Stefania Petrovskaya. And the pseudonym Stalin turned out to be a kind of alteration of the former name Stefan, from which only the initials K. Saint remained.